Hello and welcome. My name is Leanne Goodwin, and today I will be discussing a BPM group's core function and activities and comparing them to this week's case study about the implementation of Lean at Wipro. So what is a BPM group? BPM stands for Business Process Management, and the main activities associated with a group like this are to create, maintain, and manage processes in accordance to the company in question's business process architecture, whether that means putting this architecture together initially or initiatives to keep it running throughout projects or other environmental changes. The creating and maintaining aspect here is primarily concerned with the business process architecture piece, whereas the manage aspect is more set to the tune of support, training, oversight and recruiting, and also advising and or mitigating any risk involved. To the left, you will see the BPM life cycle. These are the phases of a BPM group that they typically go through. It is important to note that within any project or initiative, a BPM group could start at any phase depending on the need, but obviously for a new project, you would most likely start with a design piece here. Okay, typical processes of a BPM group. The diagram to the right was replicated from the text to show just some of the high-level activities of an effective BPM group. You will notice that this stays very consistent with a create, maintain, and manage framework, all the while keeping in mind the business process architecture either being developed based on the direction of the business and its overall strategy or already put in place by management. You will also notice the emphasis on streamlining of processes and supporting the process performance system, or in other words, keeping the machine running. Okay. A little bit about Wipro's history and the strategic direction it intends on heading. I just wanted to touch on this briefly to give a little background. Up until 2004, Six Sigma was in place at Wipro. Through the years, it was decided that a different route was probably needed to respond to collaboration issues in-house, as well as trying to keep up with customer demand in terms of innovation. Wipro saw quality slowly becoming another commoditized feature in the software marketplace and knew that they needed to respond accordingly. As part of the Lean rollout, the Productivity Office, in conjunction with some project managers, an SQA group, and a couple external consultants who were versed in Lean from a manufacturing perspective, were brought in and essentially made up a BPM type group in charge at Wipro. Now that we have an understanding of a BPM group's responsibilities, let's take a closer look at the alignments and deficiencies of Wipro in accordance to an effective BPM group on a high level. Some alignments to note here are first, the utilization of CMMI at Wipro as a process improvement approach. A CMMI serves as a type of internal audit to really assess the effectiveness of both project management training and the managerial activities therein. Next on the list, training methods and understandings. Wipro had in place a lot of good training methods and a strong culture supporting those training initiatives. Compliance reporting and documentation. It was mentioned that projects at Wipro utilize the waterfall approach, so they had something in place there. Third, effective scoping tools such as DSM and a few others in place, which really allowed for a smooth transition through the phases of each project and ensured completion on time and per specification. And lastly, support for Lean in the BPM group appointed by upper management. So, in other words, they had pretty good management buy-in from conception of this. Okay, some key deficiencies seen with Wipro's approach here would be, first of all, lack of unified oversight by the BPM type group assigned. Secondly, lack of accountability or enforcement of a standardized process structure, which is referring to the fact that project managers were not held accountable for using the lean approach to projects, and there were no repercussions or standards set in place telling them they had to utilize any specific method in their projects at all. Furthermore, there was a lack of business process structure, and no authority was given to the project managers or BPM group to compel the adequate participation amongst stakeholders. Really, the bottom line is that there was no real business-oriented or streamlined approach for getting the job done, including no real business process architecture that was in place. As said in the text by a Wipro employee, and this is a direct quote, through things like CMM, we have gotten very good at managing processes. However, we don't really know how to manage people, not processes. Here's a table I created to show Wipro's activities and how they tie into the main activity categories of a typical BPM group, and if they align or are deficient. I welcome you to look over this further as I have put it in your handout. Thank you for your time and participation, and I look forward to your questions and further discussion this week on the message board. Thanks a lot.